Well, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man continues, and we're going to have more fun today on Spider-Fan. Hello, my webbed wonders, and welcome to yet another episode of your friendly neighborhood Spider-Fan, the podcast that combines saving faith with Spider fandom. Brought to you by Geek Devotions, a network of podcasts of devoted geeks who are devoted to letting you know that you are loved. That's right. If you don't listen past this moment, know this. God has a plan and a purpose for your life. You are loved. Do not give up. And joining me in the web space again is the OG Spider fan, my dad, Bobby Boykin. And we had so much fun last time talking about the premiere of Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. And then they dropped 3 new episodes on us all at once. So I called you up and I was like, we got to do this again.
Yeah.
We got to do this again. And this run of episodes actually had a lot more cool stuff in it.
Yeah.
So let's just dive right into it.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that stood out to you on this next chunk of 3 episodes?
I still like the art. I still like the way that the colors, the vibrance, and just it's not the new age cartoons, you know. It's drawn in something. It mimics the comic books that I used to hold in my hands, you know, and very, very tactile. It crossed so many storylines from the original comics. It's like, there were 4 or 5 different issues all crammed up into that one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of conflict. Peter Parker still trying to be, who he is, and trying to figure it out who I am.
Right.
It's a twist to me that, Osborn knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And
I'm having a hard time with that because, for one thing, the art style is drawn in such a way that he looks so much like the comic book character. He has the same hairstyle, a lot of the same mannerisms. He has this, I'm a rich board, CEO board, so I know everything that's going on in my building. But at the same time, he's talking about protecting the city and helping Spider-Man. And the way it's written, I find myself genuinely liking Norman Osborn as a person, but my Spider fan knowledge is saying, I get it's like a spider sense tingling. It's like, wait a second, but we know what he becomes.
Yeah. Even when he's showing Peter all these new outfits and all that, and he's amped up, and he keeps telling Peter, but you have the final choice.
You're right.
You make the final decision. But here, try this on. This has got to work. Right. And in the back of your mind, you get the feeling like this is a facade.
Yeah.
I'm just stroking this young man's ego, and then I'm going to weaponize him to do everything that I want to do.
Right.
Yeah.
I honestly thought that he was the one supplying the tech for all the super criminals that kept popping up.
Yeah.
Because the symbol is an OO. I thought, okay, Oscorp.
Yeah.
Obviously. Yeah. So it makes perfect sense, but it caught me off guard when Otto Octavius is the guy designing the tech. But I thought, okay, this is where the villain part comes in.
Yeah.
He's making the supervillains to convince Peter to try out his new gadgetry. Yeah. But when it turns out, no, he really is just trying to help a superhero.
Well,
what's interesting, though, is when he was trying out all the different suits, those outfits are from a mini-series in the Spider-Man mythos called Identity Crisis. In that story, Norman Osborn frames Spider-Man for a murder. And so there's a long section of time where the police are actually actively hunting and pursuing Spider-Man. Wow. So Peter, so he can continue his hero work, designs costumes to take on different personas. And those different outfits they had in the episode were those personas. They had Dusk, which was the Batman black-looking one. Prodigy was the Thor-inspired one. And then a Hornet. You saw Hornet, the one with the wings.
Yeah.
The only one that didn't have was Ricochet, which was a little bit of a letdown because Ricochet was my favorite one.
Yeah.
It's him in a leather jacket and a mask, and basically what he does is he runs and jumps off of walls all the time.
Yeah.
He never actually sticks to walls. But it's neat that they incorporated that into the episode because in the comics, it was Norman Osborn who created that situation that he needed to make those suits.
Yeah.
So I find it interesting that Osborn was the one that designed those suits.
What I noticed was Peter not being himself, and Osborn is trying to force him into this mold, and it's not working. It's not, it's right. Not him. Oh, this doesn't fit. I can't do what I need to do. And, we face those life struggles all the time. We try to fit in. And at first, Peter Parker is going, yeah, this is going to be cool. But no, this doesn't feel right.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I think, there's a little intuition going there that, maybe this is not the right place for me.
How do you think of how they introduced Harry? Now, in every other version of Spider-Man that I've seen in the animated, Peter and Harry are always friends from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
But in this series, they're kind of thrown together by accident. How did you think that they worked that out?
I think it still works. It's doable. I think that in this series, Harry is, Peter, you saved my life,
Mm-hmm.
and whenever he finds out that he's Spider-Man, I think Harry thinks, cool, this will work together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it still works. There's a bond there that, they didn't grow up together, not in high school together, that kind of thing. And they do make some nods to, Peter Parker's in school, and then he has to go and fight crime at night, and Lonnie's a football player, but now he's a member of a gang.
Yeah,
and so there's some decisions going to be made, and then Harry can do pretty much what Harry wants,
right?
Yeah, and it's not going to hurt him.
It helps Peter sell the excuses he has to make up.
Yeah.
For being late. I like that we got to kind of see their friendship start, because at first Peter's like, look, I don't want anyone to get in trouble. I don't want anyone to be in danger. So I don't know that it's going to work having a friend to come on once Norman basically says, he's going to be part of the team now. But then when they're talking about Captain America and kind of geeking out with each other about it, and you see that bond start to form, it really reminded me of how actual friendships start. Like when you meet somebody new, it's awkward and weird until you find that commonality, that common thread that was like, hey, we both like this thing.
Yes.
And then that's where the bond starts to form. Yeah. There was something else I wanted to discuss. Let's talk about the Russian mob for a second.
Okay. Yeah.
There was Unicorn.
Yeah.
Who is kind of the big bad in the very last episode. But we did see nods to two other classic Spider-Man villains. Dmitry Smerdyakov, who eventually becomes the Chameleon. And I find it interesting that the face they gave him looks a lot like Kravinoff, because in the comics, Kraven and Chameleon are stepbrothers.
Okay.
So I find it interesting that instead of giving the Chameleon his usual blank, featureless white face, they give him a face that looks a little bit like Kraven.
Yeah.
To show a common genealogy there. And then also we've got Mikhail, who I did not recognize him at first, but at some point he looked a certain way, and it was like I finally saw him for who he was, and all I needed to see was a gray horn coming out of his forehead. I was like, oh my gosh, that's the Rhino.
Yeah.
So I like that. I like that they, instead of portraying him as the idiot brute who just lumbers through everything, which is a popular way of showing the Rhino, they actually show him as kind of an honor-bound guy. He helps Spider-Man out a little bit, but he doesn't go full-on hero, because his attitude is, you're sending me back to prison, so the next time we meet, I'm going to beat you up.
Yeah.
But for this one time, I'm going to help you out.
And there is, once again, a good message in there. The whole no honor among thieves. Unicorn bails on them just before they get caught, and then later on she is going to sacrifice this guy because Peter Parker is going to save him. But if or Spider-Man is going to save him from this laser blast. But even if he don't, so what?
Uh-huh.
And then Well, now the Rhino, if I may, he's kind of go, well, wait, she busted me out of prison. I've got to stay and help her. But then, wait, she threw me under the bus and was going to kill me. So I can't let her hurt Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So he's conflicted. And even at the very end, he flips the script again and he says, next time I'm going to kill you.
Right.
We're even,
And it's interesting because in the comics, the original Rhino, he actually becomes reformed. Mm-hmm. There's a whole series where he gets married and turns over a new leaf, puts away the Rhino suit, and says, I'm done. And then, I'm trying to remember. I think it was a resurrection of Kraven, but he sends a new guy who wants to be the next Rhino after the original Rhino and basically says, you can't become the Rhino until you kill this guy.
Yeah.
And in doing that, it forces him to put the suit back on and become the Rhino again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's neat, the nods to all of the different comic stories.
And it's, if you were following every one of the comic books, you could see that nod. And there's just enough for, the old guys that are reading the books to say, yeah. Even in your youth, when you were reading the Spider-Man, you could say, yeah. But somebody just coming on, just new to the Spider fan, they may not know that nod, but it's a good thing for us.
Right, yeah.
It kind of plugs us in.
It's like it's saying, we recognize that you old-time fans are here.
Yeah.
This is for you.
Yeah, right.
But to someone who is completely ignorant of the mythos, they still have a fun story to watch.
And it doesn't drag the story down.
Yeah. I don't know who did the voice acting for Otto Octavius, but that was one of the best on-screen animated Dr. Octopuses I think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like when I read a Spider-Man comic and I see Dr. Octopus, that voice is very, very close to what I hear. It's a little high-pitched, a little nasally, but I don't know. It was a little uncanny to watch because it's like the only thing he was missing was his arms.
Yeah.
If you just stick arms on the back of him, that is the comic book octopus come to life.
Yeah. And for me, not so much the voice, but the way that he portrayed himself, the way, that this is just business.
Right.
And the business is going to make me the king of the world.
Yeah.
But, I'll give you whatever you want. But, if you have the money.
It's almost like they combined Dr. Octopus and the Tinkerer together.
Yeah.
But that really makes sense because if Octopus is a genius who can build mechanical arms, it would make sense that he would build stuff for other people to fund his research.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I like some of the new directions they're going in because I think it's a fresh take. It updates the mythos. I got to admit, I'm not as big of a fan as I thought I would be with all of the attachments to the MCU. Like the second episode talked about the Sokovia Accords, which comes from Captain America Civil War.
Yeah.
And they keep referencing MCU events, but this is also not the MCU. It's its own thing because Peter is being mentored by Osborn instead of Stark. His suits are different. Yeah. The interaction with the characters is different. And I think for me, it almost takes me out of it a little bit. Like I get originally this show was supposed to be a prequel to Spider-Man Homecoming. It was supposed to help us see the years of Spider-Man being Spider-Man before Tony Stark drops in his apartment. And I still see nods to that in the storytelling, but I kind of wish they would just let the MCU go altogether. And let this be its own thing.
My take on that is it's running in the background. It's not a something that newsflash, blam. They just mention things that are going on and they discuss it as if we were in that world. That's what we would do. Peter Parker has his own thing going on.
Yeah.
Now, and everything that's going on in the background is still happening. There are still gangs running, and they've got to deal with that. But I think it running in the background gives a nod to, this is when well, I know what they're talking about. I know when that happened.
Yeah.
You know,
And I think that's the thing, though, is like Civil War is one of my favorite MCU movies.
Yeah.
Mostly because the Civil War event in comics is one of the things that made me start collecting comics as an adult. I mean, I read the mess of that as a kid, as you well remember.
Yeah.
But what made me started collecting as an adult was the Civil War event. Mm-hmm. So when they made the movie, I was excited to see it. Well, in Marvel Civil War, Spider-Man is there in the middle of the fight. And in this version, obviously, he's not, because he's back in New York taking care of things.
Right.
And I like that. I like that because Stan Lee did that when he was writing a book. Mm-hmm. Spider-Man would be web swinging through the city and accidentally bump into Thor on his way to stop a crime.
Yeah.
And then you would see that referenced in other, like a Thor comic, where Thor's on the way to fight Loki. He'd bump into Spider-Man. So it gave this feel of, this is the world we live in.
Right.
And that's great. It's just that the specific references they make are so close to movies I've seen.
Yeah.
But the continuity doesn't line up.
Uh-huh.
And it kind of makes me wish that they would just kind of let that go altogether. Did you ever watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
Yeah. I didn't watch all the series, but yeah.
The first couple of seasons had a similar problem. They were trying to stay connected with the MCU.
Yeah.
And so the pacing kind of slowed down. Mm-hmm. But once they kind of geared the story to where they didn't have to keep up with the MCU anymore, that's when the series really hit its stride. And it started getting really interesting, where they didn't have to – basically they were making up episode ideas where they could stitch in the movies. And then once they said, okay, we're not going to do that anymore, it started telling their own stories that weren't connected. That's when things went really well. And I think the sooner the series can do that – I mean, I like the series anyway.
Yeah.
But the sooner they can say, okay, the MCU is its own thing, we're doing our stuff now. I think that's when the series will really start to hit its stride.
Okay, for me, I'm not worried about it, kind of thing. It's in the background, and even with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the part about trying to stitch it all together. If you left that alone and you just concentrated on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., then that's what the story is. Yeah. This is Peter Parker's story.
Yeah.
And everything else just happens. It doesn't have to stitch together for me.
Yeah.
Because in the back of my mind, I know, all that's happening. But what's happening with Peter Parker right now? And I think that's the focus. And so I don't try to connect those dots.
Yeah.
But that's
I try not to. But like I said, Civil War is one of my favorite movies.
Sure, yeah.
So when they show the clip of Ant-Man swinging War Machine around, I'm like, I remember that scene. And in fact, in that very scene, the reason Ant-Man is swinging War Machine around is because Spider-Man is in there fighting with him, helping him trap him.
Yeah.
So I was like, he's supposed to be there, but that's just my own brain.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we, it's like when you said you read the comics as a child, and I don't know if you remember or not, but on the back of one of those comic books was to fill this out and it'll start coming to your house.
Yeah.
And that was, we did that. So that would be the mail that Branson got in his name at his house. So we did plant a seed pretty deep there.
Yeah. Well, 30 years later, I'm doing the podcast on the character. Yeah, I remember getting those in the mail. The first issue I got was Amazing Spider-Man. I think it was 372.
Yeah.
It was drawn by Mark Bagley. And Alistair Smythe had just come back from the supposed dead. It was sending his Spider Slayers after Spider-Man. And the Black Cat had just shown up back in his life and was working on the good side now. She was a hero instead of a villain. And this was my first exposure to a lot of the Spider-Man characters. I watched the cartoon growing up.
Yeah.
But that was the first Spider-Man comic I ever remember reading.
Yeah.
And I think that's what hooked me on the character and the medium of comic books.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I had a chance to meet Mark Bagley and got him to sign that comic. And I told him, I was like, you are the reason I even like comics.
Comic books, yeah.
Because his artwork is just so iconic.
Mm-hmm.
But all right, well, we are about to transition into the next phase of our show. So buckle up your seatbelts, folks, because my spider sense is tingling. Welcome to Spider Sense Tingling, the section of the show where we take the awesomeness that is Spider-Man, whether it's in the TV shows or the comics and make some spiritual connections. And Dad, what did you glean from these 3 episodes of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man?
I got 2 things really out of this. One was when Peter Parker was trying on all the different outfits, for that had been made for him, and it was not really Peter Parker. It wasn't his thing.
Right.
He couldn't make them work. They were uncomfortable. And in life, we do that. We try on different lifestyles, different energies, or whatever. And what happens is, if it doesn't align with God's plan for your life, it doesn't fit.
Right.
You can't make it work. But whenever you fall into the role that God has, he knows the plans he has for you, and his plans will come to fruition, and so that's what happened with Peter there. And he finally, it's just, it's not me,
right.
And so that was one thing that I got out of that. And then the other one was when Spider-Man was fighting with Unicorn, and she found his weakness. And his weakness is he likes to save people. He doesn't like to see innocent lives lost. And so she weaponized that. And so, poor Rhino would have been toast if that was not his weakness, And, it reminded me of Daniel in the Bible study that we have that you're leading, and how the only thing that the satraps could find against Daniel was his integrity to God. And so he's not cheating. He's not stealing. He's not doing anything wrong. The only thing that he does is he prays to his God. So let's weaponize that, and that was the only thing that they could find. And so it was their downfall. And if you think about it, when the episode we saw, it was Unicorn's downfall too. She weaponized his weakness, and in the end, Rhino pulls the helmet off so she doesn't kill Daniel.
Right.
And it's or doesn't kill Peter Parker.
Right.
So, it's like those lions, those mouths were shut.
Right.
So that's a couple that I got. Yeah. Did you find any?
I did. But I like that, though, especially the connection to Daniel, because that's exactly what happened. She saw a virtue that Spider-Man had and used it against him. Just like the satraps who wanted to accuse Daniel, they could accuse him of nothing except his loyalty to his God. And so they tried to weaponize it.
Isn't that awesome?
That is. We should live our lives in such a way that the only thing they can weaponize against us is our faith.
Is good. Yeah.
One of the things I noticed, we're following Lonnie, who is already kind of an aberration from the Spider-Man story in that he's a jock, but he likes Peter. He appreciates Peter's intelligence. He, wants to sit next to him, wants to buy him lunch.
I have trouble with that. How you have things running in the background. To see the football jock like Peter Parker, the nerd in school, but it works in this storyline.
Right. Well, in the story, to save his brother, to help his brother out, he ends up involved with a street gang. And at first, Lonnie does not enjoy it. He gets in arguments with the gang leader. He doesn't show up on time to meetings. He ignores phone calls. And he makes it very obvious, I don't like this. This isn't good. But he's doing it because he's trying to help his brother out. Well, you see over the course of the episode, he starts to like it a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, until the end of the episode where they finally give him his nickname of Tombstone.
Yeah.
He actually smiles and says, I kind of like this. So we see this fall of Lonnie, the captain of the football team, who's a straight A student and is going to go pro and do these amazing things, to Tombstone, the member of the 110 Street Gang, who kind of likes the reputation of being tough and other gang members being afraid of him. He likes that vibe. And it reminded me of a verse, Psalm chapter 1, verse 1, actually. And it says, "Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night." That psalm is basically saying, blessed is the man who doesn't surround himself with people that do not push him towards holiness, that do not push him towards seeking after God and meditating on the law. Now, Lonnie's situation was rough in that he was trying to help his brother. And I'm not saying that were I in his situation, I wouldn't be tempted to do the same thing. But I think the fact that even if he's in a situation he doesn't like, that's completely against his character, the longer he's there, the more accustomed he becomes to it, the more comfortable he gets with it, to the point to where by the end of the episode, he actually likes it. Mm-hmm. And for people who are familiar with some of the Spider-Man villains, we know that he eventually becomes a super villain. But we see that degradation, mm-hmm. that I'm around these people all the time, but I'm not doing what they do. I'm just here.
Yeah.
I'm not doing anything bad. I'm just, I'm just going for a run of tacos, or I'm just, I'm going to be late to school because they need me to run an errand, or just something like that. Well, now I'm skipping out of football practice because I've got a meeting I've got to be to. I'm getting involved in fist fights to. They're giving me a nickname, and I really like this nickname, and I think I can make this work. And just the corruption of the soul. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a warning to us as followers of Christ to surround ourselves with people that will help us push towards holiness. Now, that's not to say we cut off the rest of the world, mm-hmm. because we're supposed to be a light to the world. So I'm not saying go and cut off all of your non-Christian friends. That's not what I'm saying at all. But recognize the influence that people have over you.
Yes.
And if you feel yourself start to slip into that, well, this is kind of comfortable, this is kind of nice, mm-hmm. to remove yourself away from that, to surround yourself with people who will push you towards godliness. Because the thing about standing in the path of sinners is it's not too much longer before you start to identify yourself as one.
And see, that's a saying that I heard long ago. Sin will take you further than you want to go, and it'll keep you longer than you want to stay. In mm-hmm. fact, it'll keep you to where you can't remember where you came from. Mm-hmm. Now, once Jesus comes into your life, sin doesn't go away. In fact, there's a lot of challenges that comes with that. But what you have to do is like Peter Parker. Mm-hmm. All those suits were nice and cool. Yeah. It just wasn't him.
Right.
And Lonnie has a wonderful opportunity, and the character he was before he joined the gang is becoming less and less and less. Mm-hmm. And he's going to start distancing himself from those people who will remind him of who he is.
Right.
His coach, his girlfriend, Peter Parker.
Right.
And I have a feeling as this progresses, he's not going to want to hang around Peter Parker anymore. Probably and then it'll be the football jock that I remember.
Yeah. It'll be the Flash Thompson character.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, if any of this has caught your interest and you want to check it out, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man is streaming on Disney+. They've dropped the first 5 episodes so far, so go and check that out. Please interact with us on all of the Geek Devotions social media stuff. Drop in the comments. What do you think about the series so far? What are some nods to the OG Spider fans that you liked? What are some of your predictions for where the series is going to go? Let us hear from you. Be sure to go to geekdevotions.com, follow us on all of our socials. And until next time, keep your web shooters full, your spider sense alert, and your eyes always focused on Jesus.